welcome all of you. I recognize and see a lot of the names of parents here, and so I recognize that we have a number of parents who are grade 5 parents, and then we also have a number of current middle school parents as well. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about the work that we've really been doing, specifically as a middle school, but really as a whole school for at least the last 3 years and really beyond that. But I can speak to some of the work that we've done here. We're committed to um, providing your students with the best learning environment possible and some of the best learning experiences. And with that, that's really a lot of the work that we have done in our push for standards-based practices. And I know Liz is going to talk about this in a little bit, but part of the reason I say practices is because there's so much more than just having a standards-based report card that goes into that. And if you are a middle school parent now, and I know that if you're also currently an elementary parent, you are becoming increasingly familiar with your students coming home and not talking about whether they passed the test or how they did on the project, but they're talking about where they are in their learning. And that's really the important piece that we want for this. And we've had some sessions in the fall for middle school parents, and we've had some sessions over time to talk about where we are. But we are in the middle school. We will be using a standards-based report card in the fall, and that is new for the middle school. But if you are a current grade 5 parent, it's probably, at least conceptually, will not be particularly new to you, because in elementary school, you're not used to seeing some of the things that our older students and parents have seen on their report cards. I just want to share with you that this work has been done in conjunction with a large number of teachers, and that we have used a lot of resources in terms of reaching out to experts in the field and talking to those who know this work best. We part of the reason we want you here today is because we want to be transparent with you in the work that we're doing, and then we also want to be able to hear from our parents and our KIS community on how the work that we're doing is going, because we know that you trust us and put a lot of faith in us as an institution to really provide an outstanding education for your students. And we want to make sure that we value that trust, and then we do not necessarily everything exactly the way that someone would wish to do it, but that we do what is in the best interest of our students and what is really research-based and supported in the practices that we've done. So that's a big part of what we want to talk about today. We will give you ample opportunity today to ask any questions and get any information that you want after Liz presents. We are scheduled, this Zoom is scheduled for an hour. We don't think that we'll take that long, but if you need time to get questions answered and you want to do that in front of the whole group, you can do so. But certainly, when we finish with this presentation, if you want to reach out to any of us at the middle school, Ms. Cho, any of us, you are free to do so, and we'll be happy to speak to you just to ensure that you have an understanding of where we are with things. So with that said, I really want to thank Liz Cho for her hard work and her leadership in helping us forward our standards-based practices at KIS, and in particular for us in the middle school. So she's going to share some information with you. She's going to share a screen. If you have any questions along the way, I'm sure that we'll be getting those answered for you. Thank you, Liz.
It's great to be back with you again. This is such a pleasure to have this parent partnership continuing. I just want to go through with you what we're going to cover today. And let's see if there we go. The objectives for the day. And at the end of our session, we'll recheck in to see if we've met those objectives. First, we want to make sure that there's a clear understanding of why we're shifting from a traditional report card to a standards-based grading report card. Secondly, we want to understand the purpose of a gradebook and its difference from the purpose of a report card. And in this process of what we're going through, I think that's really an important distinction for all the parents, as well as the students, and as well as the teachers. So let's move along together on that. whatever it is that we do, we always want to begin with the why. And if you have been at our previous sessions, I'm sure you've heard it, but we really want to capture it here to make sure that we're on the same page. Simon Sinek talks about the importance of beginning there and not only just with the what. So I want to capture that all for you here. And this was an incredibly reflective practice for me as well to say, can I define why we're what we're doing for our KIS community? And I'm happy to report that I could define why. So let's see what you think. See if you can finish the sentence, and you don't have to do it out loud, but think about that. KIS is dedicated to standards-based practices because, and see if you can fill in the blank. I'm putting the educators on edge right now. You better get it right. And we all better be on the same page. And I'm curious how we've been doing in communicating with our parents as well. So parents, as you think about this, what do you think that fill in the blank is? So if you could think about that, kind of hold on to that. Our why is pretty succinct and simple, and it is the heart of why we do what we do, anything here at KIS. And it is to ensure that we make learning meaningful for our learners. Right? Again, why do we do what we do? It is to ensure that we make learning meaningful for our students. And if we want to really get at that why, we have to think about how we're going to get there, right? What is it that we put in place that we're able to answer this why and we can work together as a community? And the how we do that at the school is to ensure very clear knowledge and the ability to communicate and measure the student progress toward learning standards. And that is different from the traditional way that we were raised, which is that you get a 90% or a 94% or a 76%. And we've got students and parents kind of, and teachers, right, trying to calculate that 0.2 more percent. And what does that look like? And we want to bring meaning to learning and not just have that be identified by percentages and construct of numbers that are quite arbitrary, which I have talked about in the parent sessions last year, which I'll give you all the links to as well if you missed any of that leading up to this work today. So then in order for us to get here and through these means, what are we using? We're really then looking at the what when we get to the report cards as well as the grade books. We're using those to capture that measurement of learning of our students toward the learning standards. And our learning standards in various subjects come from different places, and they're all research-based, up-to-date 21st century learning skills that we're looking for, not just what is 2 plus 2, right? But we're really looking at the critical thinking skills and the applicable skills that we want to get our students to be able to do so that they can take that away with them in their lives, not only just for that next test or exam. With that, let's talk about that what aspect. A grade book versus a report card. They are not one of the same. A grade book is a teacher's record of individual assignments that are both formative and summative to show student progress toward the standards. And I'll talk about this a little bit more in the next slide, but let me just give you the definitions first. And the report card is used to inform families of a student's academic progress at the end of each semester. Yeah, so they're different. A grade book is used as a record, and a report card is used to inform the families where the students are at the half point and at the end of their learning journey. Grade books are used for teachers to input the grades of how the student is doing. The students and parents, when logged into PowerSchool, are able to see which standards are covered in the work that they produce as evidence of learning. So that's where once a teacher has gone through some activities or projects or tests, they capture how the student has done, and through the use of rubrics as they are teaching the students and working with the students and in their communication, they clearly lay out for the students what the standards are that they're aiming to get them to be proficient at. And then the report card then is used to synthesize the information that shows how they are doing, and it goes home to the families at the end of the semester, once again, to inform them of the students' academic progress, right? With personalized comments from the teachers. So they serve two differing purposes. Once again, Power School, and I think the parents have the ability to, not the thought, I actually know that you guys do. And as you do, we really want you to understand that when you log in and the students, that the standards in detail as to what it is that the teachers are working with are clearly shown there. We get back to the why, and let's see if I can concisely capture this and see where you were with this sentence stem. KIS is dedicated to standards-based practices because we want to make learning meaningful for our learners. And how we do that, and we strive to do this by clearly knowing and communicating and measuring student progress turning toward the learning standards, and the what, the means through which we get there, right? What are we using to communicate that? We really use the gradebook and the report cards that we send home as a snapshot of where they are. To kind of give a break to me speaking, this is just a 2.5-minute quick video that captures the essence of what I talked about and why we have educational institutions that are moving to standards-based report cards and learning. So be with me in watching these 2.5 minutes. Here we go.
Standards-based grading is an innovation in education that focuses on student learning and helps increase achievement. Instructional techniques in standards-based classrooms better engage students and foster positive learning environments. Rather than tracking a single overall grade, subjects are broken down into many smaller learning targets. Each target is a teachable concept students should master throughout the course. Learning targets are written in student-friendly language, so students can understand and participate in their learning. They link back to rubrics, which give concrete guidance on each target. As students work on activities, they can self-assess their progress. Teachers provide specific feedback to help students improve. Education becomes a conversation about skills, allowing students to engage in and take ownership of the process. In traditional grading, this sort of feedback is possible, but less common. One score per assignment does not provide enough information for deep student engagement. While some good teachers do give helpful feedback, the structure of a traditional classroom makes it difficult. Scores in standards-based grading usually range from 1 to 4, reflecting a ladder of mastery, increasing in complexity. At the bottom, students have no understanding of a topic. As students learn, they climb up a rung as they gain basic understanding. They keep climbing until they reach the target. Standards-based grading data makes differentiated instruction easier to implement. When teachers have mastery information readily available, they can dynamically group students and give them level-appropriate lessons. Students at level 1 get activities to help them reach level 2. Level 2 students get activities to climb to level 3. Classrooms break into smaller groups with students working independently on activities intended for their skill level. With relevant instruction, students are more engaged in their learning. They can see their efforts result in growth, reinforcing work ethic and good habits. Sometimes students take multiple attempts to move up the ladder. In standards-based grading, students can try and retry as they work toward the targets. High-stakes tests are replaced with multiple opportunities to demonstrate mastery. This creates an emotionally safe environment where failure is temporary. Fear is removed from the classroom, encouraging students to stretch themselves, make mistakes, and learn.
I will make sure that this is sent out to you through Jim, but this is just a short link that not only gives you the access to the video, but also transcript of the video. So if you need more time to slowly digest what it's saying and read what the audio is saying, it gives you that access as well. With this, I want to go over what this might look like for us in the actual standards-based report card, which I think many of you are here very curious about, but we wanted to ensure that we have the why captured for you and repeated so that we can definitely be on the same page. So when we look at this, before I move on to anything else, I kind of want to highlight that I used my own son's name. And as I was going through these examples, I really had my son, who is now 9 months old, which is crazy, in mind, that as I'm seeing my son as a learner and as he's going to get older, what does it really mean as an educator? And what kinds of meaningful learning do I want him to have at school? And what kind of communication would I want as a parent that comes from his learning institution? So as a nice little break, I hope you think my son is cute, because I'm a little bit biased and I think he's cute. But in all seriousness, please keep in mind that your children are so precious to us, and we understand that through research and all the hard work that we are ensuring that's being done with our teachers. It is because we care for your children and we want to provide them the best education possible and communicate that in the best way possible with you. So I've used Finley as a sample name. Our report, when you receive it, you'll have a warm welcome from Jim Slade, the principal, and that'll be at the top. And then we will have information that shows KIS standards-based reporting information, like what is it? What does that look like? And we're giving you a brief synopsis and as a reminder of why we do what we do. And then it'll give you the assessment levels and the descriptions for, in the video, you saw it as 1, 2, 3, and 4, but we are actually using the proficiency descriptors and defining that for you, not just looking at a number, in order to really break that traditional thinking that our students are defined by a number or a percentage. So then, what does it look like in the second page? We're going to have the student information, and also you will have a semester summary, right, of what the students covered in that class. Right now, the summary is part of the teacher comment on the student. But what we're doing is that we are taking that part out and putting it at the top. So everybody, for example, in grade 6 English, sorry, my example is 6 and 8 mixed up, sorry. In an English class, we know what was covered in that class and is clearly captured at the top. And the comment box where the teacher talks about the student can really be personalized to your child. And then we have, of course, the capturing of the standards, what the definitions of each part are, and how the student is doing. And I want to show you where we are in this process and where Michelle could really have your feedback and partnership with the parents as well. But before I get to that, the other part on the teacher comments, you'll see that at the bottom as well. The teacher gets to do a personalized comment for the students and the parents to receive in the report. Another way, it's the same thing that I just presented to you. Another possible way to present a report is that you see all the standards that were covered in the semester listed, and that's one possibility. But remember, you can see all of these standards in PowerSchool when you click on an assignment and see what they covered. Right now, where we are as a school is to see what should go on the report card itself. So I'm juxtaposing two different possibilities of what our report can look like. So when it goes home, you see the semester summary, and then you see the grouping of our standards that is more simplified on the left, and another possibility being that we list out all of the standards. Research shows both ways to work, really, and it has to be fitting to the context of our school and what is best for our community. And that's where we are in our work right now, navigating through different types of reports that might be helpful for the parents. And again, you will be hearing from Michelle to say, we would love your input, and we would love that partnership from the parents to see what you think about that as we make our decision about the final format by April. this link, it's a bit.ly link, and if you type it in exactly as is with KIS capitalized and parents lowercase, it takes you to the YouTube list that gives you the parent sessions that I did last year, sessions 1, 2, and 3, that lays out our work. And I will have this video edited and added there as well. So you can go to one place where everything will be available for you for your review. Our objectives today were to understand why we're shifting from traditional to the standards-based report card, and to understand the purpose of a grade book, and to understand the purpose of a report card and the difference between those two things. I am certainly hoping that these objectives were met today, but as I finished my part of the presentation, I'm going to kick it back to Jim so that we can have a conversation and take any questions that you might have as parents.
Liz, thank you so much for that detailed, but still, I think, short enough explanation of where we're going and why we're going there. Parents, I want to give you the chance to ask questions. You can do so in the chat. You can unmute. Our teachers as a middle school have been talking a lot about this and looking at this. Specifically, our committee of teachers has been working on this. I'm just going to thank them publicly. They're not here to hear me, but I just want to share that Ms. Uemura, Mr. Marslander, Ms. Smith, Mr. Wellner, Ms. Mugatha, Ms. Abel have all been a part of that, as well as Mrs. Quirin and Mr. Majors and Ms. Cho and I, in meeting regularly to kind of look through a lot of these things. And then we have also taken that to our middle school teachers to look at. So there's been a lot of thought and effort, and we've used a lot of research-based information to help guide our thinking. So parents, if you have questions, if there's just something you're wondering, I know that it feels awkward sometimes in a public space to ask that question. You can also chat it privately if you want, and then we can ask that out loud for you if that is more comfortable, but you're welcome to unmute your mic. And then we're going to do something that our teachers do with your students that is uncomfortable. We are going to give you some wait time to see if you have any questions that you need answered or would like to have answered.
Hello, I have a question. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I was just wondering, as a newie in the middle school, I just want to ask you whether this kind of standard grading will be globally accepted to every school.
That is a great question, and I'll speak a little bit, and I think Ms. Cho may also want to respond. But as a matter of fact, internationally speaking and around the world, this is becoming increasingly common for students around the globe in terms of what they are seeing. So we often have students that now transfer to KIS from other places, and when we get a report card of their learning, it is exactly, I don't want to say exactly like this, but it is a standards-based grading and reporting format. So we're able to see those. And from a school perspective, the nice thing is that when we get that, we often not just have an understanding of what kind of a student we get. Frankly, so many of our students, are wonderful. They're all great here at KIS, but we also have an understanding of specific areas where they have strengths and where we might need to support them. And that's the beauty of this coming from another school. It's increasingly common, and you'll see it more and more around the world. And Liz, I don't know if you want to respond as well.
I think you captured that pretty well. The very short and simple answer is yes. And you don't have to worry about this being unfamiliar to educational institutions.
I would just like to add, if you haven't seen some of the resources that are already in the KIS Parents bit.ly, one of those videos does go through the history of grading and kind of the contemporary standard. So yes, in short, that is information that is more easily understood by a broader audience. So if many of our families are transient and moving every few years, it actually supports that process. And as a fellow grade 5 parents, one of the things I've been really excited to see from the elementary school and preparing for middle school next year is that my own child has a much better sense of where he is in that learning progression and can explain what is going well, where he feels really confident, what are his strengths. and the areas that he needs to invest more time in, be more careful, double or triple check his responses to make sure, because it's an area where he's not quite working independently and wants to progress further. So you'll see that transition from elementary to middle school really continue with that personalized, more specific feedback that is globally recognized. We do have a question in the chat. I'm not sure if you've seen that, about the specific type of feedback and what we see on the scores. And again, for our new middle school parents, you may not be familiar with the Power School portal, but as Ms. Cho was explaining, you do actually see an online grade book. So if this is your first child going to secondary school, that is something that is new for most of us from when we were students in school. And so students are seeing that progress, which will be reported in our Power School online grading portal next year in a standards-based format. So whatever the test or project was designed to be evaluating and providing feedback on will be broken down into several different components, not just one general test score, but very specifically about the parts that were done and at what level of proficiency. And then on the report card, there we will either be one of the two formats that Ms. Cho showed, having another repeat of all those standards broken down, or looking at clustering those into varying domains to show how those different standards that we're working toward one subset worked, and giving a more holistic view on that semester grade report. And I'll let one of our other team members jump in to answer more about that.
Yes, and if I may, I find that latter part of the question really interesting, because I feel like that is how we were raised. Where my kids made a mistake on the test, can I see that? So I want to focus on that a little bit. So standards-based report card, the fact that we're getting to this part is because we have been preparing the whole teacher community to be able to do this. So it's not just, we're not just giving a test that says grammar, here are 10 grammar questions, and when you miss one, you have a 9 out of 10, so now you have a 90%. What we're doing is we're getting rid of that. So let's say that there was a quiz, sometimes it might be, here are 10 grammar questions, and you did it, and you missed one. But right now with standards-based practices, it's not that we take that as a justification for that A-. We're actually looking at that and saying, oh, interesting. Michelle has missed this, and I see it as a pattern. She's missed this in several different areas, and it's constant. What is it that we need to be focusing on? And especially if the learning target was that we want them to be able to clearly defend their claim, right? It's not just write a good paper. It's clearly defend the argument that you're making. Then we look at it holistically and say, because you're having a hard time with these grammatical structures, what you're trying to convey is not necessarily successful. So let's work on that. So if you go back to that 2.5-minute video, I think it would be really helpful. And for us, it takes a while for us to kind of break out of that mindset. For years, we went to school that way. And I'm talking about like us, right? Our generation. And we really want that to shift. So it's not just about, I made that one mistake and we have to fix that one mistake, as it is, why were we learning that in the first place? And to what greater picture does that learning fit in?
There's this one sent direct to me. I just want to make sure to answer that, which was a really good question. I think, how frequently is the grade book, how frequently is that updated? And I think the short answer is teachers might, different teachers in different courses will update them with different levels of frequency. And so one of the things that I know Mr. Majors and I do regularly is we are checking to see the frequency of updates. And oftentimes teachers might update at different stages of a project, for example, and those things. And so if you as a parent are ever in a position where you're like, it seems like it's been a while since there's been an update, I think that is a perfectly valid reason to connect with the teacher. And oftentimes, I know from experience, when a parent has done that, the teacher is like, oh, I was just getting ready to make some updates today. So yes, let me share with you where we are. But I think that's a really fair question. I think that's something we are constantly working with our teachers to help them remember, that since you're not in the classroom with their students, that one of the best means of communication for you as a parent to know is that progress update in Power School. And so it helps you to have a frame to have a conversation with your student as a learner. So that's one of the pieces that we consistently work on. And so feel free to at any point reach out as a parent and say, I'm really trying to make sure that I understand where they are. So I'm looking for an update.
And then Mr. Slade, if I could jump in on that really quickly too. Sometimes as the semester goes along, if you're looking in for current middle school parents who maybe are familiar with the Power School portal, if you look in that and you don't see a letter grade listed, it's important to click on the icon that you see there. That's sometimes it's a dash and maybe it's an I, depending on what device you're on. But speaking for like myself as a middle school parent, recently I was looking at my kids' grades and I noticed that one of them didn't have a grade listed for the class. But when I clicked on the icon there, in this case it was a little line, there was actually a lot of information in there. There were a lot of formative assessments that were in there that gave me a lot of information about where he was in the class at that point, even though I didn't see necessarily a letter grade yet. So, in our current system, as we move into a different reporting system next year, even if there's not what appears to be a summative grade there, it's important to click on that anyway, because there's probably information in there that really helps you to understand where your child is as a learner too.
I think with the timing aspect too, one thing we want to zoom out and think about is if we went to a group of kindergartners and said, who is good at art, every hand would go up. If we asked who is a great singer, every hand would go up. And as we go through traditional schooling, sometimes you see fewer hands go up. If we asked a group of seniors, they may be much more critical of themselves. And so especially at this important middle school time period where students are growing and changing so much, it's really essential that we recognize this is your first attempt at learning algebra. And we don't expect you to know it all in September, but we do want to be clear about what it is we're trying to learn, how you will be assessed and demonstrating that knowledge, and the next steps in that learning progression throughout the way. With our large and diverse population, students are at varying points in varying subjects at different times, but we want them to all recognize, here's where I currently am performing, and I know I have the support at KIS and at home to keep moving forward along that progression. We don't want anyone like the cartoon girl in the video saying, I'm not good at math. We want them to say, here's the part I'm really good at math, and here's the next thing I'm excited to learn, and these are the steps I'm going to take with my teacher to get there and reach that higher level of proficiency.
There will be no GPA in middle school. Frankly, when we report to students transferring to another school, we report that we don't use a GPA in the middle school anyway. The only thing we've ever used it for is, to the second part of the question, in calculating principals list and honor roll. So the reality is that we can't have a principals list or honor roll, at least as it currently exists, because there won't be a GPA. And there's no need for a GPA in the middle school, because it is just a way for students to focus their energy on where they rank against other students rather than focusing on their own learning. And we really want to think of that. So we are considering what we might have instead of or in place of our current honor roll system. And so that's one of the things that we are looking at. We'll want some feedback from you all as parents, but we will not have a GPA in the middle school.
And that tells into a question of there's a concern thinking that this will not prepare for them for high school. Just so you are aware, this is the work that we have been doing with high school all along. The fact that the whole standards-based practices, it's not just middle school. The entirety of the standards-based practices reaches our whole school. And in the secondary, we have been really dedicated to this work, and high school teachers, once again, it's not just a report itself or the final report card that determines it doesn't magically solve the traditional mindset. We have been working with the teachers, and in the high school, the practice of working with the standards, getting learning outcomes out there for students to understand what they are, speaking the language of the learning targets, using the standards is going to be the same. The only difference in high school is that for their college preparations and applications, right now, KIS still stays with the letter grade system. There are no percentages and there are no numbers in high school either. And so we are at a point where we just have the letters that are being recorded and reported. Now, is that a problem? It's not, and you'll see it in the research. And as we do standards-based practices, there are many forms that a report card can take. And right now, as we're moving, every piece of rock that we have to move, we have to ensure that we're doing it the right way and for the best way for our students. And as we report because this is what we have traditionally done, and we have traditionally reported letter grades in the high school going to universities. So currently that's where we are, but there is no fear that this will not prepare them for high school, because the high school, it's the same practice in learning.
I'd say actually another big step for this, for those of you with students, most typically in upper middle school classes, are looking at that progression, is that because of our proficiency scale, in some courses, students may be in combined middle school and high school classes, because we increasingly want to meet students where they are in their progression of learning, and then keep them at the just right level of challenge so that they stay excited and engaged. And so again, that differentiation and approach to personalized learning that we saw illustrated with the different colored boxes on the schedule is something that we try to provide. If learning targets are too challenging and beyond students' reach, they'll start to think they can't do that and give up. But if things are too easy, they no longer stay interested or excited to move on to that next level. So for each student, looking to maximize that just right level of challenge to keep learning really engaging and motivating moving forward.
Okay, so right now, I have an 8th grader and I have an incoming 6th grader next year. So my 8th grader right now, and how that PowerSchool is used for him, is that if he had a math quiz on chapter 3, there would be a grade, right? But next year, will there also be a grade in PowerSchool? Will there just be like 3 little dots? I guess just more clarification on that.
Are you good, Jim?
Yeah, I go ahead, Liz, but I think I understand it better now. You go ahead and answer and
I think so too. So if I don't answer correctly, or maybe I misunderstood the question, in PowerSchool, when it goes in, what you're going to see is, so let's say that there was a quiz or a test, and what you see is that what standards are attached to that quiz or the test. Does that make sense? And how your child has done in their progression toward that standard. Does that help?
So it's, let's say chapter 3 quiz covered, standard X, standard B, standard C, and my child did, and then, so next to that, would there be what would be next to it if he met it, didn't meet it, or?
Right, it would be the proficiency language. So it would show, that he was proficient or approaching for each one of those standards. So the letter and the number is gone, and it's replaced with the proficiency language.
Okay, so I could see, so if I were to click on the quiz, and it has like the little view comment section, the view comment section would then be more detailed in what he was able to understand, did well. I'm sorry, I cannot remember those proficiency things. But so the language would be there versus a grade.
Right, and I think maybe part of this question too is about what does the feedback look like for the student and for you as a parent, and that process doesn't really change significantly based on the reporting system. So like for current middle school parents that are familiar with like our reassessment process, for example, and if my child needs to reassess something, do they know what they need to improve and what skills they need to build on in order to reassess? And that stays very much the same. So that feedback portion that the students see on the assessment of the project in terms of specifically where they did or didn't meet the standard, that's going to be very similar, except, but I think the main difference is when you do look in PowerSchool, instead of seeing a letter or a number associated with the work that was done, you would see proficient or approaching or wherever they fall on the proficiency scale.
Okay, that makes sense. And it sounds like, from what I'm envisioning in my head, from what I'm hearing, is that it will be a very much more detailed feedback on a test or a quiz that my child has taken. So I really like that aspect of it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you bring up is that what you will, and some teachers are working through this now, but what you will stop seeing, essentially, you'll stop seeing here's the grade or here's how they did on the quiz. What you'll see is that we took a quiz or we did a project or we did something, here's how they did on the distinct parts and the standards of it. So just even by the nature of that, the feedback is definitely more specific. And so what it helps is too, is rather than students saying, oh no, I didn't do well, they're saying, oh, I need to work on this one thing. So I need to go see the teacher and talk about this. And I clearly know how to do this stuff. So I'm ready to progress to the next step. So that's one of the things that we see as an improvement, is that students will be able to focus not just on, oh, I need to score better, but oh, I didn't quite understand this particular standard. I need to get some help with that.
Okay, thank you. That totally makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
I also feel like, on a random note, I need that image that Yoon has, the Zoom meeting audio only with video.
I know. It's so true. It's so true. Okay.
Great question in the chat. For middle school students taking high school classes, do they still get a letter grade for those classes, or will teachers provide different report for middle school and high school students? At this moment, the plan is for them to actually have the high school report. So what will happen for particularly many of our students in grade 8, they will be in some high school classes and they will get the high school report. So our 8th graders will actually be getting, potentially, and maybe 7th graders if that's the case, but they'll be getting 2 reports, one which will be the middle school report, one which will be any high school courses. And what we have heard from some of our current parents is that they see that as a nice way to get comfortable with preparing for the fact that there are letter grades. So, you know, the question earlier about the two systems of being prepared, many of our students, especially in world language classes or others, often end up taking courses that are high school courses. And so they can get that, they can really translate the standards-based understanding they're learning in middle school and elementary school. Those same practices continue in high school, but they'll be able to understand in terms of a letter grade. So that's the plan, that they would actually have 2 reports, one for their high school courses and one for their middle school courses. I can just share that I'm really pleased that we had questions. I know sometimes on Zoom it's awkward and maybe it's easier when you can type it, but I appreciate it. I think honestly, parents, as we move forward with this and as we start the year, we're going to continue making sure you're informed and you're included in the process, but you're going to have questions. Please ask them of us. We want to make sure that you understand this, and we want to make sure that our students do as well. But no matter how well they understand our processes, sometimes they don't explain it so well at home, or they don't want to talk about it so much. So we want to make sure you have a pretty clear understanding of the things that we're doing as well. So we really appreciate you taking the time to ask questions.
And if I could add one more thing, is I know that last year when I did the sessions, we did English and Korean. And if there are any parents who feel that they have lots of questions that they want to ask in Korean, and 한국말이 더 편하셔서 필요하시면 그게 필요하시다고 Mr. Slade한테 연락을 해주세요. 그러면은 제가 한국말로 하는 세션도 스케줄을 잡아서 세션을 해드릴 테니까 I just wanted to share that, that you have access to me who can speak with you fluidly if you need that. And I'm happy to provide that as needed. So please let Mr. Slade know if that's what you would like to request.
Thank you. Well, we're about 5 minutes left in our hour. So I think at this point, if there are no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.